Week 3. Welcome. Hi, my name's Bill. Let's jump in. Week 3 is a lot of fun. I mean, as much fun as a grad course can be, right? I hope you're having fun. I'm having as much fun as one would hope in an EdTech grad course. It's good stuff. The Amazing Brain. Doesn't that feel like it could be a children's book? I bet it is. Let's Google it really quick. The Amazing Brain book. And it sure is. It's on RazKids, which our school subscribes to. So there you have it. Not the point. Let's jump into this week. There are a lot of important but small things. Pretty different from probably what you're used to. For example, 3 discussion board posts, right? So let's go kind of one thing at a time. I recognize that you're able to read the week 3 page, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit on it. Looking at the readings and the videos, you're continuing with the SUSE text. By the way, chapter 5 is going to relate to discussion board number 2. So depending on how you plan out your week, you definitely want to get the reading done before you do discussion board post, or at least most of it, or something, because the discussion board posts ask you to reflect upon the reading from the SUSE text. All right. There's 2 small videos. They're not the most excitingly narrated videos, but there's really good information. They're short enough. They're about 5 minutes each. There are 2 articles. One of them is a nice PDF you're going to have. That's kind of a more traditional look at a mental model of what a learner is. And then it's actually a New York Times opinion piece called You Still Need Your Brain. And what this actually reminds me of, I'm going to riff on this for just about a minute, is, like, yes, you can Google everything. And so the argument against is like, well, why do we have to learn anything? Why do we have to memorize any facts? And the connection I made is actually around subitizing. So my early young teachers, elementary teachers, kindergarten teachers, the word subitizing, middle, high school, you're like, what? That's the ability to instantly recognize a quantity. All right, so if I do this, how many fingers was that? You can say it out loud. You didn't say it out loud, but you know that it's 7, right? Why didn't you say it out loud? Now this is just awkward. That was funny in my head. I'm glad my wife's not in here. She'd just be like, she would be shaking her head. But the ability to instantly recognize a quantity is subitizing. This is why, like, playing cards are grouped in certain ways, and it's not just kind of a random splattering of like 8 things. It tends to be 4 and 4, and you're like, 8, got it. So I would think that actually, if this was an early childhood educator writing this opinion piece from the New York Times, they would have gone in the direction of subitizing. They didn't, but it was just like, if you're trying to multiply, what's the example? It's like 9 times 4 times something. Like, the idea is that you need to have a few automatic things so that you're able to keep that kind of a working memory and then look at and search for the new thing, right? So it's like, this part's automatic, this part is new. If it was all new, and I don't want to get too much into it, but I think the idea for me is that if it was all new, you'd really struggle to take all that new information in. Sorry, I hit my laptop there. It shook the screen, I'm sure. So some of it you've got, and then you add just a little bit of new stuff, and you're good to go. Super interesting piece, particularly when you think about the stuff that we know and that we continue to force students to memorize. Super interesting, right? So discussion board 3 has, 3 discussion boards. I'm going to go in order. Number 1, you do a 30-second brain test. I am 75% right-brained, 25% left-brained. And there's some research out there that's more like, it's not as much like right and left. Like, we tend to be like, I'm a right-brained person because I'm creative. I'm a left-brained person because I'm analytical. Like, we're all the things. So try not to get kind of too trapped into the, I'm a left-brained person, I'm a right-brained person, because literally we are both, and we use both a lot. And part of it will just kind of depend on your mood. It's also kind of like what style you are, particularly being like a tech director, and when I used to work in a recording studio professionally, even just playing music professionally, it's a very, all of those things are like really creative. Like, in being a tech director, there's a lot of kind of coaching and like what's the vision for technology in our school, and what do we use, and here's a device, what can we do with this, here's this app, oh my gosh, like what lessons are possible, there's this new addition to Google Docs, like how could we, it's a deeply creative thing. Same thing with music, like you're playing music, and it if you're not a musician, it would probably feel like the most like, oh, creative, like you're such a right brain person. But my goodness, like whether you're recording or playing, like you need to be like disciplined, analytical, like super critical and left brain. Quick story: I was recording. It was Orange Whip in Santa Barbara, Orange Whip Recording Studios. Any punk rock fans? No, if you ever were like in the early 2000s, like half of the bands that you listened to were recorded in this studio. It was awesome. So I was there in like 2002, and oh my gosh, that's 19 years old. What is happening to us? Um, there's a lot of punk rock bands, but every once in a while there would be like a not punk rock band. And one person that came in is Robert Trujillo. Do you know him? You can pause and Google it if you want. If not, I'm going to spoil it in about 2 more seconds. If you do know him, you're like, oh my gosh, you know Robert Trujillo? I worked with him for 2 days. He's currently the bass player for Metallica. This was right before he joined the band. And he was the most serious person with an instrument in his lap that I have ever seen. Um, the dude had long hair. It was like braided down to like past his waist. He walks in, he's just like, oh, what's up? I was playing in a bunch of still really big bands at the time. I was like, oh my gosh, like Robert Trujillo's here. And he was working on a solo bass album. I don't know if it was ever released, but it was like 8 different basses and then drums. And so like the normal bass guitar you have, but then ones that went like way up high that were technically a bass, but like higher than a guitar. And then like way low, like hard to hear kind of low. Um, like just crazy album. So he walks in, he's just like, hey, what's up? Blah, 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 blah. We sit down in the control room, which is where the computer is, and you hit record. And he gets kind of situated, pulled his hair back, and he's like, all right, go. Record. Plays it, and it's flawless. And I don't use that term lightly. Like you normally spend, to play through one song on bass, you would spend about 8 hours, most people. He played through it once, and it was perfect, which I had never seen, right? So good. He's like, all right, save that one. That one's good. Let's add one more track, and I add a different version of it. And having just 2 basses, by the way, is bizarre. But he did. It's like, all right, another track, go. And it's like, the guy's like, filed or new track, single track, mono. He's like, go. And it like posture, like perfect, record. Let's do that one more time. Go. Plays. And you're just like, oh my, like so serious, so like professional and analytical. He's like, oh, that part, go to the second chorus. We need to fix that. And so like you see him on stage, and I saw him like a few months later. He was on some award show, and his hair was still really long. He had just joined Metallica, and he's like shaking his head, and the bass is like down at his knees, and you're just like, this guy's crazy. Like what a creative crazy guy. And he was like so serious and so analytical, right? So like that story I think goes to the point that it's not just left brain or analytical. It's not just right brain creative. It is often both of those in a very particular kind of interface. So as you go through that test, as you reflect, as you discuss in your discussion boards, don't lose track that it's like a binary thing. You are left or right, and different tasks are left or right, because it's infinitely more complex. And I think it's also a really good place to start conversations. Prompt number 2, this is going to come from your readings and videos. You're going to share out a strategy that you plan to use for being a teacher, knowing what you know about using both hemispheres. So either a strategy or an activity, and how it will activate both hemispheres of your student's brain. Make sure that you have citations, and you can read the details with that. Your third discussion board prompt, there are 3, and before I introduce it, for each one, make sure you have your initial post, and for each one, make sure you have 2 thoughtful replies. So it's going to be a total of 3 posts, and a total of at least 6 replies. If you forget what criteria you're being graded with, go under course items, discussion board, and the rubric is right there. The weekly one just takes you directly to the prompt. But weeks like this, I often see students will be like, I did my post, and then 2 replies. And I was like, well, That was for like one discussion board post. You need actually 2 replies for number 2, 2 replies for number 3. So don't forget about that. The prompt number 3 is posting your presentation. So your slide presentation is due Thursday. This is your group. You did part 1 as the paper. Part 2 is the presentation that is due Thursday before midnight. And then you're going to reply to 2 groups by Sunday night. For this, you only need 1 person to post it from your group, so coordinate who is going to do that. And this is part of assignment 1B. So you'll see it like in the rubric and in your grade book. The discussion board post shows up as assignment 1B. So assignment 1B is the presentation. So you already did your paper, APA formatted. You're going to do a presentation. I highly recommend Google Slides, and I recommend 2 ways to get visuals into it. The first is the noun project, right? Person, place, or thing, noun project. Feel free just to create an account, use the free version, and you're going to want to give credit to people like 6-point font down at the bottom of your slides. That's how you're going to want to give credit to people. My favorite way, I learned this from Rushton Hurley. If you don't know Rushton, Google him, Rushton and then Hurley with a U, and an H and an R and an L-E-Y. It's funny in my head. Look at me, just with all the awesome jokes today, right? I'm enjoying this. I know you are. You also have to listen to this. And Rushton would say like the title of the piece, the artist, and then the website. So if you took one of my pictures from Flickr, it would be the name of it, like Beautiful Sunset. I wouldn't name it like that. Beautiful Sunset by Bill Selleck on Flickr. And that'd be teeny tiny on the bottom of your slides. So I recommend doing that, either the noun project, which you should credit the creator of those graphics, or just Creative Commons search. So if you don't know search.creativecommons.org, it's worth it, or just Google Creative Commons search, and it allows you to search for images that the photographers have licensed. You're allowed to use them. Please do not do the following 2 things. Do not just Google it and paste in a random photo, because you don't have permission to do that. That's called stealing, and that's someone else's intellectual property, and you likely do not have the rights to do that. So please, from this moment forward, do not just Google an image and drag it into slides. That's very bad. Please encourage your students to do the same. We can talk more about that later if we need to. Second thing, please do not use clip art from the year 2000. Right? People like shaking hands, like the multicolored puzzle pieces fitting together. Just we've collectively moved on beyond that. There are far more compelling ways to show visuals in an interesting way. The noun project is the default I would go to. Kind of a weird workaround for a group project. You could use Keynote, and there's a lot of shapes. If you have an Apple device, Keynote, you can grab a shape and then like copy and paste that into Google Slides. If you're feeling particularly like, go get them. Otherwise, Google Slides is by far my recommendation. Noun project, and then search.creativecommons to find images if you need images for it. So be sure and carefully read through the rubric. That's at the bottom of the Google Doc. That's how you will be graded for the group integration project, part B. That is all for week 3. It's a lot of little things. So if you're a checklist person, go ahead and check those off. Do you enjoy making checklists? That's a West Wing quote. If you're a West Wing fan, you'll be like, yeah, it is. Actually, if you're not a West Wing fan, it still is a quote. That is all for week 3. Reach out as you have questions, and try and stay safe out there. Bye, everybody.